So how do we respond to the narcissistic sister? Or really, you can apply this to any narcissist in your life. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been counseling men and women for many years now who have experienced abuse or who have been perpetrators of abuse. So I keep getting this question a lot, and I'm sorry for responding a little bit later, but I've had quite a few people ask me how to respond to a narcissistic sister. And it's, well, you would respond to her just like you would respond to any narcissist in your life, is my advice. And, you guys have to decide. You have to decide for yourself what works best for you. But, my advice to dealing with a narcissist, you have to decide too, also, like, I can talk about low contact. I can talk about no contact, all of that kind of stuff. But you have to decide. My rule of thumb is think about like the amount, how much contact you have to have with your sister. If you do not have to have contact, meaning that you don't have like nieces, nephews, or, other things like that, and you can afford to go no contact, then I would certainly recommend that. If you have parents, or you feel like you can't, you don't want to estrange yourself from your family, then do that. But I would say if your sister is one that you have to have in your life, a person that you have to have in your life, and you have to have regular contact for whatever reason, and have to is, that's you have to decide the level on that. But, and maybe work with a licensed mental health professional in your area. But if you have to have consistent and regular contact, my advice would always be to, pander to the ego. If you want someone who is, less chaotic, less disruptive, less of a pot stirrer in your life, you definitely want to learn how to pander to the ego and speaks to them in a way that allows them to think that they are special, or that they have, some special qualities about them or anything like that. So you definitely want to speak to them in a language that allows them to think that they're super awesome, and that you understand that, and that you will give them, a little bit of lead because of that. And I'm not saying let them steamroll your life, but you definitely have to pander to ego a bit. So that means being super complimentary, highlighting their strengths, highlighting, their attributions and things like that. Just sort of, allowing them to think that they've got it going on, and that you see that, you recognize that, and you appreciate that. And gosh, you don't know what to do without that. And I think that's pretty much the strategy that you could use to deal with any narcissist in your life. You can also, people talk about gray rock. Gray rocking basically being as like uninteresting and not contributing to the conversation, and just, being akin to a gray rock. Gray rock method is okay. For me, thinking about, gray rock, it'll get you through. It's a survival technique. But I personally don't think gray rocking is meant to use long term. And the reason I don't think that it's meant to use long term is because I think it affects your healing, and it can have a ripple effect in other relationships in your life. And so you have to be careful with that. And I feel like people sometimes use gray rocking as a way to sort of put a Band-Aid on it, so that they don't have to make a decision about the relationship, and they can just sort of keep things as is and sort of stay stuck. But I would encourage you to not feel stuck, to not feel victimized, and take control of your life and make a decision about whether or not it's worth it to keep this person in your life. Hope this helps. Thanks so much for watching. Like, comment, follow, and share. One last thing I will say about, going no contact. It's, in my opinion, it's always a good idea to bless and release someone. So, you just wish them well and send them on their way. But you work on releasing any sort of negativity and bitterness and anger and resentment around that relationship. You do it, again, I would recommend doing it with a licensed mental health professional, but, if you can't get to that just yet, then using some great self-help workbooks, and just sort of doing the work to sort of release the toxicity. Otherwise, you may bring her along with you spiritually, even though you've let her go. So it's really important to, allow yourself to release the emotional aspects of that toxicity.